For 2 million years, the human menu included items that would make most people today physically ill just to describe. Meat so decomposed it could be spooned rather than chewed. Bone marrow extracted from carcasses that had been rotting for weeks under the African sun. Termites by the thousands, eaten alive as they swarmed from their mounds. The partially digested contents of herbivore stomachs, tree bark, and clay. And in the darkest extremes of survival, the flesh of other humans, butchered with the same systematic efficiency as deer. What you're about to discover is that for 99% of human history, the strangest possible foods weren't strange at all. They were what built us. We live in an age of food safety paranoia, expiration dates measured in days, meat that must be cooked to precise temperatures. The slightest hint of decomposition sends food straight to the trash. Yet for 99% of human history, these modern horrors were edible and even preferred. Because if we rewind to Olduvai Gorge, Tanzania, 1.86 million years ago, we find something extraordinary in the archaeological record. Stone tools clustered around bones, not fresh bones from a recent kill. Old bones, weathered bones, bones that other predators had already processed and abandoned. These early humans used leftover carcasses. They were systematically exploiting them. The percussion marks are particularly telling, concentrated on long bones, creating distinctive impact craters where stone hammers struck repeatedly. Why such effort on bones that had been lying in the African sun for days or weeks? Because inside those bones was marrow. And marrow, even partially decomposed marrow, was worth the effort. It was calorie-dense fat in a landscape where fat meant survival, but marrow extraction was just the beginning. At Kandjira South in Kenya, around 2 million years ago, the evidence becomes even more compelling. It went beyond opportunistic scavenging. The archaeological record shows persistent, deliberate carnivory, multiple occupation layers, all showing the same pattern. Humans were making a living from what others had abandoned. The bones tell us what was on the menu. Antelope, yes, but also zebra, buffalo, even young elephants. The cut marks appear in consistent locations, around joints for dismemberment, along muscle attachment sites for defleshing. They were skilled processors with refined techniques for extracting every possible calorie. And then there's Kubifora, also in Kenya, dated to 1.95 million years ago. Here, the menu gets even stranger. Mixed among the usual savanna prey, archaeologists found something unexpected: turtle shells with clear butchery marks, crocodile bones showing systematic processing. Catfish remains associated with stone tools. These early humans scavenged the savanna. They were venturing to the water's edge, that incredibly dangerous margin where predators concentrate, to harvest aquatic animals. Why take such risks? Because aquatic animals offered something unique. Their brains were particularly rich in docosahexaenoic acid, DHA, crucial for brain development. Their organs contained iodine, nearly absent in terrestrial meat. These weren't random food choices. They were strategic decisions, trading danger for specific nutrients. Your stomach is lying to you, or rather, your conscious mind is lying about what your stomach can handle. Because deep in your digestive system, there's hardware that tells a very different story about what you're designed to eat. In 2015, researchers published something remarkable in PNAS. They measured the stomach pH across the mammalian world, from herbivores to carnivores to omnivores. And humans? We're outliers. Our stomach acid is among the most acidic measured in any mammal. Our pH ranges from 1.5 to 2. That's more acidic than most carnivores, more acidic than other omnivores. In fact, our stomach acid concentration converges with just one group: obligate scavengers. Vultures have a stomach pH around 1. Humans, 1.5. Two species facing similar dietary challenges, developing the same solution: stomach acid that can neutralize bacteria, destroy pathogens, break down proteins that have already been partially decomposed by microbial action. Every human alive today carries the digestive system of a scavenger. Your stomach produces acid concentrations that would be completely unnecessary if you only ate fresh food. It's overkill for farming, overkill for hunting. It only makes sense in one context: eating carrion. Our gut bacteria, the microbiome that helps digest food, shows flexibility compared to other primates. We can shift bacterial populations rapidly in response to dietary changes, from high protein to high carbohydrate, from fresh to fermented. This plasticity isn't random. It's what allows humans to extract nutrition from foods in various states of decomposition. Consider the biochemistry of putrefaction. When meat rots, proteins break down into amino acids and peptides. Complex fats split into fatty acids. In essence, bacterial decomposition is doing part of the digestion for you, pre-digestion. And if you have the stomach acid to kill the bacteria, once they've done their work, you get the nutritional benefits without the infectious risks. The accounts are consistent across cultures, across continents, across time, and they all say the same disturbing thing. Fresh meat was often considered inferior to aged, fermented, or frankly putrid meat. In 2022, John Speth and Eugene Morin published a comprehensive synthesis in paleoanthropology, documenting deliberate consumption of rotted meat and fish across human societies. The Inuit preferred their seal and walrus meat high, so decomposed it had the consistency of cheese. The Evenki of Siberia buried fish until they liquefied. Groups in the tropics, from Africa to Southeast Asia to Australia, regularly consumed meat that had been left to rot for days or weeks. This was preference. Choice. The stinkier the better, according to numerous accounts. Observers consistently noted that these populations consumed thoroughly putrefied meat as is, or barely cooked, with minimal illness before colonial contact changed their foodways. The descriptions are visceral: meat green with decomposition, maggot-infested carcasses considered delicacies, fish fermented until they could be drunk rather than chewed, and the people eating these foods healthy, robust, showing none of the food poisoning symptoms you'd expect. This is more than historical curiosity. It potentially explains one of the most puzzling aspects of Neanderthal archaeology. Those impossibly high nitrogen isotope values, they make sense if Neanderthals, like recent foragers, preferred their meat aged. Decomposition concentrates nitrogen 15. The more decomposed the meat, the higher the isotope signature. What we've been interpreting as evidence of apex predation might actually be evidence of systematic consumption of carrion. The advantages are numerous. Decomposed meat is partially pre-digested, requiring less metabolic energy to process. The proteins are already breaking down into amino acids. The tough connective tissues have been softened by bacterial enzymes. For a hominin with limited food processing technology, this is invaluable. There's also the competition factor. Fresh kills attract every predator and scavenger in the area. You're fighting lions, hyenas, vultures, all at their most aggressive. But a carcass that's been rotting for a week? Most competitors have moved on. The smell that repels them attracts you, if your stomach can handle it. And with pH 1.5 stomach acid, humans could handle it. The fermentation process itself creates beneficial compounds. B vitamins increase during decomposition. Certain amino acids concentrate. Beneficial bacteria proliferate. The same principle behind fermented foods we still eat today, like cheese and sauerkraut, just taken to an extreme our modern sensibilities can't accept. We must be clear. Direct archaeological evidence for deliberate consumption of rotted meat in the Paleolithic remains elusive. We can't excavate preference. We can't fossilize smell, but when you combine the ethnographic pattern, the physiological evidence, and the isotopic signatures, a compelling picture emerges. Our ancestors tolerated spoiled meat when necessary. They likely sought it out. If meat was about protein, bones were about fat. And in the Paleolithic, fat was everything. The problem with protein is that you can't live on it alone. There's a condition called protein poisoning, or rabbit starvation. Eat too much lean meat without fat or carbohydrates, and your body rebels. Nausea, diarrhea, eventual death. Arctic explorers learned this the hard way. So did our ancestors, which is why the archaeological record shows an obsession with fat that borders on industrial. It starts simple. Olduvai Gorge, 1.86 million years ago. Percussion marks clustered on long bones. smash the bone, extract the marrow. Marrow is 85% fat, rich in calories, keeps for weeks inside the bone casing. It's perfect survival food, but our ancestors didn't stop there. By the Upper Paleolithic, we see something extraordinary at Vale in Portugal. This goes beyond marrow extraction. This is bone grease rendering. The process is labor-intensive. First, you smash bones into fragments, not just to access marrow, but to maximize surface area. Then, you boil them. For hours, the fat renders out, rises to the surface, where it can be skimmed and stored. The archaeological signatures are distinctive. Extreme fragmentation, with bones broken into pieces smaller than necessary for marrow extraction alone. Anvil marks where bones were systematically processed. Evidence of prolonged heating. It went beyond opportunistic scavenging. This was planned, systematic extraction of every possible fat molecule. New research from Neumark Nord in Germany pushes this technology back much further. 125,000 years ago, Neanderthals were running what researchers are calling a fat factory. One area of the site shows concentrated evidence of massive bone processing. Not dozens of bones, hundreds, possibly thousands, all showing the same systematic fragmentation pattern, all associated with evidence of heating. This exceeded short-term survival processing during harsh winter conditions. This was industrial-scale production. The Neanderthals at Neumark Nord were rendering bone grease in quantities that suggest storage, possibly trade, certainly forward planning on a scale we didn't previously associate with them. The investment required is enormous. Wood for fuel, time for processing, labor for bone breaking, hours of boiling, all for a final product that might yield just a few pounds of rendered fat from an entire skeleton. But that fat was liquid gold in the Paleolithic. Concentrated calories that could be stored, mixed with dried meat to make pemmican, used to waterproof clothing, burned in lamps during the long darkness of Ice Age winters. The technology evolved over time. By the Gravettian period, around 30,000 years ago, we see specialized tool kits for bone processing. The toolkit included hammerstones and anvils with specific wear patterns, grinding stones for pulverizing bone fragments, possible evidence of specialized containers for boiling, though these rarely preserve. In the archaeology of weird foods, perhaps nothing is as underappreciated as insects. We see them as survival food, desperation, diet. But the evidence from Swartkrans in South Africa tells a different story. 1.8 million years ago, someone was crafting specialized tools for harvesting termites, not making do with termites, targeting them. The bone tools are distinctive, found in the same layers as Paranthropus robustus and early Homo fossils. These aren't random bones. They're selected, shaped, used until they developed a specific wear pattern. Under microscopic analysis by Lucinda Backwell and Francesco D'Erico, published in PNAS, the wear patterns are unmistakable. Polish concentrated at the tips. Striations consistent with being thrust into soil. These bones were used to probe termite mounds. The wear patterns match experimental tools used to extract termites from Trinerviterms and Macroterms mounds. The Polish comes from contact with termite saliva and soil. The striations from pushing through the hard-packed earth of termite tunnels. Why termites? The nutritional profile is compelling. Termites are approximately 38% protein, 46% fat, higher in calories than beef, rich in iron, zinc, and essential amino acids. A large termite mound can contain millions of individuals. Process a single mound and you have days of protein and fat. No hunting required. No competition from large predators. Just knowledge, tools, and patience. The behavior persists in modern human populations across Africa, the Hadza of Tanzania, the San of Botswana, numerous groups throughout the Congo Basin. All have elaborate traditions around termite harvesting, specific seasons when elates, the winged reproductive termites emerge in massive swarms. Collection techniques pass down through generations. Children learn to identify which species are best, which mounds are ready for harvest, how to minimize soldier termite attacks. When termites are available, they're preferred foods. The fat content especially is prized. In lean times when large game is scarce and mongongo nuts are out of season, termites provide the lipids necessary for survival. One informant told researchers that a good termite harvest was better than killing an antelope. Less work, more reliable, better fat content. The technology at Swartkrans suggests this behavior is ancient. When our ancestors first started using tools, insects were on the menu, and the target was specific insects. Termites specifically, with their concentrated colonies and predictable locations, were worth developing specialized technology to exploit. The implications ripple outward. If hominins were systematically harvesting termites 1.8 million years ago, it suggests a level of ecological knowledge we don't always attribute to them, knowing which species to target, understanding seasonal patterns, recognizing the signs of a mature colony. Of all the weird foods in the Paleolithic menu, one stands out for its ability to disturb, not insects, not rotten meat, not even bone grease. The evidence is unambiguous. Sometimes humans ate other humans, and the way they did it suggests an ordinary meal, devoid of ritual or symbolism. It was dinner. Moulagersi Cave in France preserves the clearest evidence. Dated to approximately 120,000 years ago, the site contains the remains of 6 Neanderthals, 2 adults, 2 adolescents, 2 children. Cut marks concentrated at muscle attachment points. Percussion marks where bones were broken for marrow. Disarticulation patterns identical to those seen on deer bones from the same site. These humans were butchered exactly like prey animals. The detail is forensic. The cut marks aren't random. They follow the pattern you'd expect from systematic defleshing. Long bones were cracked while fresh, spiral fractures indicating marrow extraction. The skull vault was open to access the brain. Every part that could yield calories was processed. Nothing about the butchery suggests hesitation or different treatment from standard prey. At Goyet Cave in Belgium, dated to around 45,000 years ago, the evidence becomes even more unsettling. Not only were Neanderthals butchered and consumed, but their bones were then repurposed. After the flesh was removed and the marrow extracted, some human bones were used as tools. Retouchers, used to sharpen stone tools, made from human femurs and tibias. The bones show clear wear patterns from repeated use. These tools were curated, carried, used over time. El Cedron in Spain shows similar evidence. Krapina in Croatia, sites across Europe preserving the same signature, human bones processed like animal bones. The consistency argues against ritual explanation. Different groups, different times, same behavior. The skull vaults were meticulously shaped. The edges were retouched like stone tools, creating smooth, even rims. They were crafted objects, requiring skill and time to produce. The combination of consumption and craftsmanship suggests cannibalism had acquired cultural dimensions beyond simple nutrition. At Moulagersi, the faunal remains indicate the cannibalism occurred during a specific season, possibly winter, times when other food sources were scarce. The humans were processed alongside red deer and horses, mixed in the same deposits. Part of the seasonal subsistence strategy, not separate from it. Everything we've discussed so far leaves physical traces, cut marks on bones, tools with wear patterns, isotope signatures in teeth, but the Paleolithic diet included foods that should have vanished without a trace, should have, until new archaeological methods made the invisible visible. Coprolites, fossilized feces, are time capsules of ancient meals. At Hines Cave in Texas, human coprolites dated to the Holocene provide visceral detail about dietary breadth. Inside these preserved feces, researchers found intact bones from rodents. They included entire small animals consumed whole. Bones, teeth, fur, all pass through the human digestive system. One coprolite contained the remains of multiple pack rats, eaten without any apparent processing. The plant component is equally revealing, seeds from dozens of species, pollen from plants that bloom in different seasons, suggesting stored foods mixed with fresh, cactus spines, grass seeds, even bark fragments. The diversity within single coprolites, representing just 1 or 2 days of consumption, suggests Paleolithic humans were consuming a wider variety of foods than we typically imagine. Dental calculus, the mineralized plaque on teeth, provides another window. At El Sidrun Cave in Spain, Neanderthal calculus preserved microscopic plant remains, starch grains from grass seeds, phytoliths from various plants. But most intriguing, chemical signatures of compounds found in conifer trees, not from eating pine nuts, but from consuming bark or cambium, the nutritious inner layer of tree bark. Other calculus studies have found even stranger contents. Poplar bark, containing salicylic acid, the precursor to aspirin, potentially consumed for medicinal purposes, though the line between food and medicine was likely blurred. Fungal DNA, possibly from mushrooms, but potentially from molds growing on stored foods. The evidence for geophagy, earth-eating, is more tentative but intriguing. Many modern populations consume specific clays, particularly kaolin, for their ability to bind toxins and provide minerals. Pregnant women especially seek out these clays. While direct Paleolithic evidence is limited, the practice is so widespread among current humans and other primates that its antiquity seems likely. Clay eating would leave little archaeological trace unless the clay contained distinctive minerals that accumulated in bones or teeth. Bark deserves special attention. The cambium layer of many trees is nutritious, containing sugars and starches. In spring, when the sap rises, it's particularly calorie-rich. Native American groups historically harvested inner bark from pine, elm, and birch trees. The practice leaves distinctive scars on trees, though these rarely preserve archaeologically. But the chemical signatures in dental calculus suggest Paleolithic humans knew this resource. So, here we are, at the end of a menu that spans 2 million years and includes everything from putrid meat to human flesh, from termite colonies to tree bark. And perhaps the most disturbing realization is less about what our ancestors ate and more about what we've forgotten we can eat. Your stomach still carries the industrial strength acid of a scavenger. Your gut bacteria still remember how to process decay. Your body still knows how to extract nutrients from sources that would horrify your conscious mind. Every safety instinct you have about food is cultural programming laid over hardware designed for a completely different world. The Paleolithic wasn't a time of desperate people eating disgusting things to barely survive. It was 2 million years of humans exploiting every possible calorie source with remarkable efficiency. What we call weird, they called dinner. What we call desperate, they called strategic. What we call disgusting, they might have called delicious. The next time you throw away food that's a day past its expiration date, remember that your ancestors would have waited another week, then fought a hyena for the privilege of eating it. The next time you feel squeamish about trying an unusual food, remember that your digestive system evolved to handle carrion that had been rotting in the African sun.